If you're making a sequel to a beloved IP, you're gonna have a lot of pressure on you. That goes double if you aren't even the original creator. Okay, just to name one example, I think we can all agree that the Star Wars sequel trilogy was a little bit controversial. I personally had a good time watching it, but I'm easy to please. Star Wars appeals to the caveman part of my brain, so I only have 3 things that I look for in a Star Wars movie. Ships go zoom, laser swords go vroom, and good music. The sequel trilogy had all 3 of those things, so I got everything I wanted. Some people were a lot less happy with it. When you're handed the job of making a sequel to a beloved franchise, you have to be really careful with it. One wrong move and the fans will never let you forget it, which is why Thief 2014 is baffling to me. This game has been sitting in my Steam library for who knows how long. I don't even remember buying it. Anyway, I finally got around to playing through it. As a longtime fan of immersive stealth sims, I was minorly enjoying myself, thinking it was an alright experience. Then I started playing the first Thief game, and once I had that point of comparison, there was no going back. Thief 1 released in 1998, and it blows every aspect of the sequel out of the water. In both games, you play as Garrett, the titular thief. The goal in the first game is pretty much just to steal things. There is a story beyond that which slowly emerges the more of the game you play, but the focus is always on stealth and creatively rehoming valuable objects. Combat exists. It's janky and hard to get a grip of, but that's fine. The game is encouraging you to avoid combat anyway. You have a sword and a blackjack. The blackjack is way more useful, as you can club unaware enemies over the head to knock them out in one strike. You also have a bow, which can be loaded with a bunch of different arrows. There's the iconic water arrow, which releases a splash of water on impact and can be used to douse lit torches. Incredibly useful. There's the moss arrow, which causes a soft carpet of moss to spread on the ground when you shoot it. This makes it easy to walk across loud surfaces without being heard. But the real star of the show is the rope arrow. Shoot this into a wooden surface and it lets down a length of rope that can be climbed, which can grant access to high up areas and looks really cool. There's a lot more tools Garrett can use, but you don't necessarily need them. Stick to the shadows, don't make too much noise, and steal everything. It's a pretty good time. So when you then go on to play Thief 2014, almost everything is worse. Let's start with the positives. The graphics are really moody and atmospheric. Some locations are just really nice to look at, with the moon rays slanting down the steep rooftops. I love rainy nights, Victorian architecture, and clambering around on rooftops, so these environments are precision engineered to put me in a very good mood. The city is filled with elevated boardwalks and steep alleys, making it feel like a vertical maze. The lockpicking in this game actually feels like a slight improvement. In the first game, you just held down the button on a locked door until it opened. You had 2 picks and had to swap between them, but there was no real skill involved in figuring out which pick was right for the job, just trial and error. In Thief 2014, picking locks is made into a simple minigame, which I got fairly fast at beating. You just wiggle the mouse until the circle lights up. Not in depth, but it does require a smidgen of precision work, and at the very least feels engaging. I also enjoy the detail that Garrett stores his lockpicks in his sleeves. I don't know why that jumps out at me, but I like it. Okay, that's all the positives. The graphics and environment design are nice, and lockpicking is less boring. So what's bad? Walking. The movement in this game is just weird. You move incredibly slowly unless you sprint. Climbing over things is janky and incredibly limited. In the first Thief, you can climb to any ledge within reach. Doesn't matter what it is. In Thief 2014, you can only climb up specific, preordained areas. The right places to clamber are signposted by scratches, white paint splatters, and grates to latch onto with the claw. Who was going around splashing white paint on all the rooftops of this city? Now, Thief 1 had slightly weird movement as well, but that's almost excusable since it came out in '98 and game devs were still experimenting quite a bit with how things worked. I was able to adjust to Thief's movement very soon after starting, and it doesn't bother me now that I've gotten used to it. But let's get back to the real pain. In Thief 2014, you can't jump. Yeah, that's right. In a first-person video game that was released in the year of our Lord 2014, you cannot jump. Instead, pressing the spacebar causes Garrett to swoop. This is supposed to be used for moving quickly from one concealed position to another, minimizing how long you're exposed for, but there's no limit on swooping. So a lot of the time, I just slide around the city like a dollar store Dementor, an omen of doom wearing tight pants. The only times the game lets you jump is when you're at a ledge and have a place to jump to. Just let me hop around, Thief. What are you doing? What about the rope arrow? Does the game have rope arrows? Yes, it does. I'm not even gonna talk about this ridiculous collapsible compound bow that looks like it would fall apart after 3 shots. But the rope arrow is also worse. Okay, so in the first game, you can shoot a rope arrow into any wooden surface. Shooting it against stone or metal will break it. Cool. It does slightly limit where you can use it, but it's never annoying. In Thief 2014, you can only shoot rope arrows into these specific wooden posts that have rope wrapped around them. Why? Not only does that limit creativity on the player's part, it makes rope arrows feel less like a tool to expand movement options, and more like I'm just putting in ladders the game developers forgot to place. Like, I'm not climbing up here because I think it will assist in my mission, I just saw the special post which signposted that this was a location of note. But this is small potatoes. There are many things holding this game back, but one of the biggest is Garrett himself. Garrett in the first game is a cool character. He monologues before each mission and occasionally comments on things he sees while you're playing.
It's a throne room. How pretentious can you get?
I love the genuine amusement in that line. Garrett in the first game comes across like a professional. He's a businessman. His business just happens to be criminal. He tries to avoid killing people because leaving a mess is unprofessional. But he won't hesitate when the chips are down. He's reasonable, calm, well-spoken, and good at what he does. Stealing things is a matter of business to him, and he takes great pride in his work. Garrett in Thief 2014, well, he's certainly interesting. He comes across as a barely contained emotional train wreck suffering from chronic insomnia. He's dressed in a full leather suit covered in weird belts and straps and is constantly consuming poppy flowers, which contain opiates, so I have to assume he's in an endless drug-induced haze. His face is so pale he could function as a second moon, and he coats his eyes in mascara, which is always the sign of a man who has a few screws loose. He's filled with angst about past regrets, and you know how people who hate Batman talk about Batman? He's like that. I can't explain it any other way, but I do love this exchange. After breaking a buddy out of jail, Garrett decides to go for a legendary vault that's in the same building. Our buddy says,
"No one is paying you to risk your neck for this."
And how does Garrett respond? He knows nothing about this vault other than that it exists. But that's enough. He has to go rob it. He has no choice. He's a total kleptomaniac. Genuinely. He doesn't steal for personal gain and doesn't rob people as a profession, he just can't stop himself. He's like a visible, physical manifestation of multiple different mental disorders and looks one small inconvenience away from a full-blown panic attack. Like, if you were walking down the street and bumped this guy's shoulder by accident, he would either punch you or collapse to the ground and start crying. There's some narrative about saving the city from certain destruction. Garrett doesn't even pretend to care. I get the idea of a dark, reluctant hero, but Garrett in this game is so cynical that you have to wonder how he even gets out of bed. He never acts like he wants to do anything. He just does. I have seen the face of depression, and it is Garrett. This is one of the most baffling, unintentional character assassinations I've ever seen. Going from a consummate professional who always gets the job done, to a depressed kleptomaniac drug addict who, through years of clambering and climbing, has so thoroughly ruined his knees that he can no longer jump. Garrett in the first game is a simple character. There's not much there, but the bits we do get paint a picture of a believable burglar who is entertaining in a very low-key way. Garrett in Thief 2014 is fascinating, but not in a good way. I honestly don't think he even likes stealing things anymore. What a tragedy. There is one final thing to talk about, and I think it drives home the point I'm making. Thief 2014 is bogged down by the developers attempting to reinvent the wheel in every direction, and nowhere does this flaw make itself more obvious than the act of stealing itself. In Thief 1, if you saw a valuable object, you just had to click a button and you grabbed it. Cool. In Thief 2014, if you see something worth grabbing, which is hard not to do since every valuable object is constantly glittering, you walk toward it, press the button, and watch Garrett pick it up. This goes for opening drawers, opening doors, putting out candles, grabbing paintings. Most of your time in gameplay is spent watching these unskippable animations that lock you in place for seconds at a time. Mantling, climbing, opening windows, crawling through tight spaces. Control is so often ripped away from the player for very little gain, and it makes Thief 2014 feel like an interactive movie more than a game. You watch this game so much more than you play it, and it gets old really fast. I thought I liked this game when I started playing. What I really like is the environment. The graphics and level design are incredibly nice, I'll say it again. But man, this series went from defining the stealth genre to this. I honestly don't remember what happens in the story, but the ending is so cynical that it loops all the way back around to being funny again. Your friend or girlfriend or whatever is possessed, so you save her, but oh no, she's slipping. Give her your other hand, Garrett. No, now's not the time, you oily rag. Just steal it later. No. does generic dark rock music kick in here? Someone just died. Is this really a badass moment? I guess Garrett is now free to just keep stealing things? Forever? Hello? That's it. The game just ends there. You've lost your girl, you killed the bad guy, and you are now free to roam the city, stealing things at your leisure. I mean it. The game lets you keep playing after the story's done. Just sneaking around the city, replaying client jobs, and picking up whatever gold letter openers you missed the first go around. Wow. Now that is how you do a nothing ever changes cynical ending. I'm impressed. I haven't seen a story this devoid of empathy since The Boys. Join me next time for a game with a much better story.